In today's video, I'm going to show you 3 of my favorite Dollar Tree Valentine DIYs that I made last year. If you like the tutorials, please remember to give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment. It really helps me grow my channel and I do appreciate it. Now let's get busy and have some fun crafting. We'll be using this garden gnome from the Dollar Tree. Gnomes are really cute, but they're really beat up, and you can see the paint job is awful. It looks like they just toss these around as much as possible to get them to look like they're damaged, and every single one at my Dollar Tree stores is like that. I used this sun-kissed peach to paint all of the fleshy areas, so the face, the hands, and his ears. And a lot of this project was just going over it with several coats to cover up those old colors and any damage. So I do go over the entire piece with probably 2, 3, sometimes even 4 coats. I'm using candy pink, and for most of this project I do make my own colors using candy pink, parfait pink, probably a couple of others, but just to get different shades and tones of pink. So I'm just going to go ahead and use that candy pink on his pants. And this is the part that probably took the most paint. I don't think this particular color had the best coverage, so I took several coats. And I'm not doing any fancy shading here or anything like that. I'm just making this elf look really cute and ready for Valentine's Day. To keep the video size manageable, I don't show you all of the base coating that I did, but I'm going to go in with my Posca paint pen to do the whites of his eyes. I used nutmeg brown for his facial hair. If you've never used a Posca pen, these work so much nicer than paint when you're doing small areas. I can't tell you how many times I did the eyes only to start all over again. So when I bought the paint pen, it went a lot smoother. I still made mistakes because I don't like painting eyes. They're my least favorite thing to do. I usually get one eye looking great and then the other eye is a disaster. To paint his shoes, again, I used the candy pink and I just added some red to it. And I'm just going over the areas for touching up. Like I said, I did end up having to paint each of these areas several coats. I think Valentine's elves are a cute addition to Valentine's Day decor. I don't see many, if any, out there. I'm sure there are, but I've never seen them, and I just think they're adorable. Here he is, looking better, all painted, base coated, and ready for some detailing. I'm going to go ahead and attempt to do his eyes using a little bit of blue. I kept it really simple, just a bigger dot of blue, a smaller dot of black. I'm going to add some details to the facial hair just to give it some dimension. So I went in with, I believe that's nutmeg brown on his beard, and then I just went in with, I don't know if I mixed a little red with it or a little black, I'm not sure, just to make some little dark streaks in his hair. Moving on to the mouth, I took that flesh color and added a little bit of light pink, and I'm going to paint his tongue and the inside of his ears, as well as his fingernails with this color. I think these Dollar Tree gnomes are really cute if you paint them. If you leave them as is from the store, I think they're pretty ugly and I usually walk by them. But then I had this brilliant idea of doing some Valentine elves, and I'm really happy with how they turned out. I go in with just the pink, a light pink, and I do his lips, or at least his bottom lip. And this little guy is hard to paint because of his shape. He rolls around quite a bit, so you can see I have my stylus there to kind of prop him up. I use paint bottles, all kinds of little tricks to get this guy to stay where I want him. Just going in with some darker red, and I'm making a series of 2 dots all around his hat. And now I turn those little dots into red hearts. The little elf has his right eye back. And now I'm going to give him some blush for his cheeks. So I use chalk pastels. You could also use a little makeup if you wanted to give him some pink or red cheeks. I prefer chalk to do a lot of shading and highlighting these days. It's a much easier medium to work with, and it gives you some really nice soft colors that you can deepen up if you want, but it just gives you a more soft look. Sometimes I'll paint it in, but chalk does a really good job, so I highly recommend getting a decent set of chalk pastels. I switched to a little smaller stylus and I'm just going to paint in a little black pupil in each eye. This is usually the part where it goes wrong. I end up putting too big of a dot in there and then I have to start all over. Let me know in the comments if you have as much trouble as I do painting eyes. And there he is looking better already. I don't think you need a lot of detail to do the face on these particular projects. I think they look cute with a pretty basic paint job. He's not cross-eyed, so I'm pretty happy with it. Here's a closer look at his hat. You can see I missed one of the hearts with those two little dots, but I do end up going back and finishing that. Now I'm going to give him a little bouquet of heart balloons. So I got these little scatter hearts from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just inserting some floral wire into the bottom of the heart so that I can string them together and give the little elf a handful of heart balloons. I like the look of this fabric covered wire better than just regular wire. That's just my personal preference. And now I'm just shaping it how I think I want him to hold them. Now I'm just cutting a scrap piece of felt that I'm going to wrap around the bottom of that wire just to give it a finished look, and it also covers that area where I twisted the wire. No one's ever going to see this part, but I like to cover it anyway. So I'm just using some Fabri-Tac glue and I'm going to glue that felt to the bottom of the wires. Found these little foam heart stickers from Walmart, and so I just glued those hearts onto the back of that sticker, but I just found the areas that will make contact with the elf, and I'm going to glue this little heart to his hands. On to project number 2. This is my all-time favorite craft so far. I'm using one of these little Dollar Tree elves from Christmas, and I'm just going to go ahead and disassemble him, taking staples out. So I have two separate parts. The legs and feet are one part, and then the sign and head are a separate part. Now, after I did this idea, I had so many other really fun ideas to do with elves. And I went to Dollar Tree this Christmas looking for more of these elf signs so that I could buy 6 or 7, and they didn't have them. I also checked their website, couldn't find them. I don't know if they discontinued them, but I was really bummed out. So let me know in the comments below if you know if these guys are discontinued or not. Now I'm going to completely cover the elf with felt rather than paint him. And so I just traced the entire elf and then cut these pieces of felt loosely based on the existing pattern that was already there. I'm just using felt and I'm going to sew these pieces together. So I have some little pink belt buckles, little black strap, and I'm just placing my pieces so that I get an idea of where I want them. I used just a square or rectangular piece of light pink for the legs and then just added that dark piece for stripes on his stockings and just cut out a bunch of felt circles in different colors. I cut some of these stripes to add to the hat. Again, I used a light pink on the hat with some red trim and some dark pink stripes. And I'm just using scraps of felt that I have for these stripes. So you can see that they're going to hang off and I trim those a little later. And now I'm just going to glue these pieces down to the felt so it's a little easier to work with when I go ahead and sew around the edges. I have never seen anyone use these elves for anything other than Christmas. So I am very excited to have a very original project to show to you guys. Hopefully this is starting a new trend with some Valentine elf projects out there. But I just love him. I think he turned out adorable, and every time I walk past him, he just makes me smile. Gluing the little shoe buckles on. And now you can see from the back of these felt pieces, I did add a thin layer of batting that I got from Walmart. And that's just to give it a little bit more of a puffy look. You can see I cut it shorter than the piece that it's being glued to. And now I'm just using some scrapbook paper to cut out that little Be Mine Valentine sign that I'm going to use. And because the sign is much smaller than the space on the sign, I wanted to make it a little bit bigger so that it fits the shape. So I end up gluing it to multiple colors of pink scrapbook paper to give it a nice border. Starting with the white, I also do a light pink color and a dark pink color. Here's what the sign looks like after all of the borders are placed. I also have these two circle rounds that I got from Hobby Lobby, and I'm going to use these to replace the hands. So in order to shape them like hands, I just had to trim a little bit off one of the sides to give it more of a flatter edge so that it looks like he's holding a sign. I use light mocha to paint the hands, and I end up doing a little shading with my chalk pastels just around the outside edge of both hands. I'm going to sew all my pieces so that you see those stitches, which I just think gives it a little more detail and fun. I used one of those mop things from the Dollar Tree, those fuzzy mop things. I don't even know what they are. Those make a terrible mess, but I thought it would look really cute to put that on the brim of this hat. Now you can see here I already added a little bit of hair to the hat. I just cut out some dark brown felt to make it look like he has hair, and I glued that to the hat. And now I'm just going to put the brim of his hat on and give it a little trim so it looks a little neater and nicer. Now I'm going to glue his hat on, so I'm going around the edge where I left a little bit of space between the batting and the edge. You can see that the hat and the hair are all one piece, and I'm just going to place that on the sign. I did go around his face with a little bit more coloring on the cheeks, as well as a little bit of outline to the edge of his face with some chalk. And now you can see how I'm pinching it because that little space between the edge of the felt and the batting, I just want it gives it kind of a puckered look or a quilted look. So I just go ahead and pinch that slightly around all of the edges. I use some red pom-poms from the Dollar Tree just to add to his hat as well as his shoes. And I'm just placing the shoes and the legs where I want them and make sure everything is the right size. Overlapping the shoes just a little bit. Again, I glued a piece of batting onto the back of this piece. And I just glue that on as well as the shoes. You could also use hot glue, of course, but I personally don't like using hot glue. I try to avoid it whenever possible. It makes a mess, and it doesn't feel good when you get it on your skin. I'm going to give these little shoes some definition by putting a running stitch up the middle to separate the shoes. I'm using 3 strands of black embroidery floss to make the stitches. Now I'm going to go ahead and glue the shoes to the sign. It seems like everything that could go wrong did go wrong when I started this channel. I lost a lot of footage. Some of it just needed a lot of work because I didn't have great lighting when I filmed it. I also had a lot of problems with my video editing software and continue to have problems. So it just is so nice to see this little guy when he's all put together. Using some Mod Podge on this piece, and I'm going to glue that down to the existing sign. I cut some felt pieces to make cuffs for his hands, and I just used two different colors, light pink and then a little darker pink in the middle, and went ahead and stitched around those. And I'm just going to glue those in place over the existing cuffs. Here are his hands all painted, and I'm just going to glue those onto the sign. I really didn't change much of the original design. I used some of the existing stripes to make my pattern with the felt, but I really, like I said, I had a lot of ideas after I finished this and different ways that I would do him if I had more of these little elves to work with. So I'm still majorly bummed about Dollar Tree not carrying these guys. I'm gluing along the top of his legs to attach to the sign. I do end up also gluing a popsicle stick on the back to hold these pieces together because gluing them this way just isn't enough. It's not sturdy enough to keep it together. I painted some gold bells, a pink color. Let's take a closer look at the finished project. You can see all of the details, including all of the little polka dots on his shoes, the stitching, the little shoe buckles. You can see the stitch work along all of the felt pieces, the little arm cuffs, the shading on his hands and face, his cute new little hairstyle and color, and the little bells on his hat. I think he turned out super adorable. I'm very happy with them, and I hope it inspires you to make a little Valentine elf of your own. I'm using this tabletop sign from the Dollar Tree. I gave it 2 coats of Waverly white chalk paint, but I do end up changing it to the color plaster. It's a nice shade between ivory and white. And I'm just taking a dark red color and again starting on the edge, just doing very lightly small circle motions and dragging it along the edge. And I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to make each letter a different shade of red and pink and have my gradient go from left to right, darker to lighter, or if I wanted to do that individually in each letter. So each letter would have dark red, medium, and then light. But right now I'm just kind of experimenting and seeing how I want it to look. I do end up changing the L, which you'll see in a bit. And I decided to have a separate gradient effect on each letter. So I'm just pulling some of that dark red out a little bit more so I can blend it with the next color. And I think a really simple outline like I did with the L here, that's some really nice look too. So it doesn't have to be as detailed as what I end up doing. You can have a really nice piece using very simple chalk techniques. I'm just going in with a cotton pad and I'm lightening up that color and just blending that color, pulling it further into the white area so it blends in with my next color. This project is really just all about layering the colors and doing a lot of blending. I go in with that medium pink shade and I start on the next letter. I do the same thing to all the letters, starting with the very darkest and just blending it out and leaving a little bit of that white background as my lightest shade. actually rubbed the chalk onto the sign because there wasn't that much pigmentation with this color, and this just allows me to get into those grooves of the wood a little bit more, and then I use my finger to blend it out. I painted the sides and the back a darker color to make the letters stand out, and I'll show you the two paints that I used a little later in the video. I repainted the L, and I'm starting over using the same technique that I did with the other letters. Here you can see there's a big difference in the color saturation, and I had this idea of, I wonder if I can make this chalk look a little bit like watercolor paint. So I just wanted to kind of blur the colors a little bit. I thought, well, how can I do that? So I just decided to try a little bit of rubbing alcohol, and I also tried nail polish remover, and either one of those does the trick. And so this is just giving tiny little swirls to the colors in my chalk. And it's a very subtle effect, but it looks really nice in person. I decided I wanted to also have kind of a chalky finish to it. So I'm just going in with some white and just very lightly going over the entire letter. And as you'll see at the end, it does give a nice kind of hazy look to it. I'm using a heart from Dollar Tree, and I just painted that with the darker color to match the back. I think these projects would work any time of the year. They don't have to be for Valentine's Day. Giving you a closer look at the final project, you can see some of that blur effect that the alcohol gave me. You can also see that white kind of haze from the white chalk. I'm really happy with how this turned out. I love the colors.